She gave $30 to a street girl, and 12 years later, a millionaire rang her doorbell. The routine was the same every time. The clock struck 5 o'clock in the afternoon, signaling the end of the day shifts for dozens of workers at a meatpacking plant in Chicago. Sienna was one of those employees who ran down the same street after work to catch the subway back home. Because the work was so demanding, she was exhausted at times. On one particular day, Sienna was left alone on the subway. Suddenly, a man's deep and gentle voice jolted her awake. He was a well-educated, well-dressed man in his 30s and spoke to her as if he didn't want to appear malicious. After thanking him, Sienna inquired how he knew where she needed to alight. As they exited the train together, he introduced himself as Howard. They began talking as they walked down the street together. Sienna lived a long way away from Howard. He decided to wait with her at the bus stop because she still had to catch a bus before getting home. The conversation moved along smoothly. They quickly discovered that they shared similar tastes, worked in the same area, and even had mutual friends. Within 3 weeks, they were dating. Their relationship was so solid and beautiful that Howard got down on one knee, opened a case holding a sparkling ring, and asked Sienna to marry him in less than a year. Howard and Sienna moved in together and went about their daily lives. He worked as a programmer for a startup company while Sienna continued to work her stressful job as a meat packer, but her life has become much more exciting since she met her husband. Not long after that, a pregnancy test revealed that a new member was joining their family. Ashley was the name given to the baby girl when she was born. And Howard was able to move his vacation up by 20 days so that he wouldn't have to leave his wife and daughter during her first few days of life. But Howard suddenly began to experience headaches and chest pains. They suspected stress, but the pain persisted even after a month-long family vacation. Sienna wanted her husband to see a doctor because she was worried about a vascular or heart problem. 2 weeks later, when Howard awoke from his bed on a Saturday morning, he felt extreme dizziness and pain in his chest. Howard was in pain, clutching his chest, and unable to speak, and Sienna immediately called an ambulance. The doctors informed Sienna at the hospital that Howard was in the early stages of cardiac arrest and would continue monitoring him because they did not believe the trouble was over. 2 hours later, there was an emergency at the hospital. Nurses and even the doctor attending to Howard's case rushed down the hall. Sienna's world fell apart when the doctor arrived. The medical team had tried in vain to resuscitate him, and Howard had passed away from a second, far more severe arrest than the first. Sienna kept her spirits up after Howard had passed and began working longer hours at the refrigeration plant to meet her responsibilities. Despite the extra hours she was given, it almost didn't make up for the time she lost with her daughter. She hoped for a raise or a promotion, but neither had happened yet. On her way into the subway to work one morning, a thin, pale girl ran into Sienna. She appeared ill and terrified. "I apologize, ma'am. I haven't eaten since yesterday. Could you please give me some change?" said the child. Sienna opened her wallet to find $30 and a few coins. She handed over the $30 and the 2 sandwiches she had brought from home to eat during her breaks. She looked at Sienna with tears in her eyes and sighed a heartfelt thank you. "I'll pay you, okay? I promise," said the girl as she exited the subway. Sienna worked hard that day despite her hunger. Even though she was exhausted and hungry, she had no regrets about her actions. Sienna was still working at the meatpacking plant after 12 years, but she had been promoted twice. She now had a little more money and arrived home a little earlier. Ashley even had a pair of roller skates and would ride them around the neighborhood with her school friends every afternoon. One day she decided to race another classmate and tripped on a crack in the asphalt, landing hard on her head and back. Ashley's friends rushed over to check on her. Some witnesses called an ambulance, and her mother was notified. Sienna was at work when she was called to the hospital and immediately rushed to see her daughter. Sienna was terrified of doctors and hospitals after what had happened to Howard. The doctor summoned the distraught mother to his office and patiently explained that Ashley would be fine but that she had severely injured her spine by striking her head and back on the floor. As a result, it was highly likely that the girl would no longer be able to walk, and even the surgery that could help would be something Sienna couldn't afford. While Sienna made sacrifices, Ashley grew up in a wheelchair, becoming a more beautiful young lady. When the girl's mother saw how sad she was, it broke her heart, so she launched an online fundraising campaign. The money would all go toward Ashley's corrective surgery. The money raised allowed some tests but no surgery. One day, someone knocked on Sienna's door. When she opened it, she saw a young woman who was well-dressed and attractive. A luxury car was parked in the driveway behind her. "Hello. I'm sure you won't recognize me, but I promised you something a while back," said the enigmatic young lady. She then took out her wallet, which held $30, and took out the notes and handed them to Sienna. Sienna looked the young woman in the eyes, and the embarrassed expression from years before had vanished. That hungry, pale, and skinny 10-year-old had grown into a beautiful and healthy young woman in her 30s. The woman introduced herself as Fanny, but Sienna never forgot. Ashley entered the room in her wheelchair, and Fanny's gaze was drawn to her. Fanny then explained that she found Sienna through the Ashley fundraiser. She said, "The $30 you gave me at the time saved my life. So, I'd like to support you and your daughter right now." That's when Fanny said that she would pay for all of Ashley's treatments. Ashley remained silent as she processed the information. Her surgery was successful and was performed at a specialty center in Chicago. It took some time, but Ashley finally walked on her very own for the first time in years. Fanny held Sienna's hands while she sobbed in disbelief at what was happening. Sienna had no idea that a simple action from the past would restore her daughter's life to normalcy.